Hey, what's up, everyone? It's the Cassius Morris Show. Thanks for tuning in for another brand new episode of the podcast. Very happy to be joined today by actor and comedian Alonzo Bodden, all the way from Los Angeles. Privileged to have a chat with him. Just real quick off the top, if you're interested in some more content, we have videos up on youtube.com/Cassius Morris, including my thoughts/reaction to Joe Rogan and Joey Diaz moving out of Los Angeles, how that's going to affect parts of the comedy and entertainment scene, but mostly how it's going to be looking in the future in general. We also have my interview with Vito from The Sopranos. That's right, the one and only Vito himself tells all about his experience on the show, including his real-life relationship with co-star/romantic interest on the program. So definitely an interesting conversation. Make sure to go check out Alonzo on all of his social media. We have links in the description below. And without further ado, enjoy this podcast. Alonzo Bodden, thank you for joining me.
Hey, what's up, Cassius? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. Just trucking along with the podcast, sort of getting used to the Zoom style. What's going on your end?
Well, it's the same thing, right? I mean, life is through a screen right
Mm-hmm.
now. And I don't know where you're at. I'm in LA. So we started to open up and, we're not allowed to have nice things. We don't know how to behave. So now we're shutting down again.
We're shutting down again. Well, I'm in Edmonton, Canada, and on a much smaller scale, we've experienced some of that. We had, a group of restaurants open downtown, and they were open. They said it was okay, and now they're saying if you've been to those restaurants, go get tested. So it's very. Do you find that it's hard to keep up with like what's going on and the pace of it? Because I do.
Well, it's day to day, and sometimes you don't even know. I think the businesses, they don't even know. Yeah, I love Edmonton, by the way, and I know the House of Comedy. I was on a Zoom with Rick, and he was talking about how it was open, and then it was open as a restaurant. Then they
Mm-hmm.
made him close it, and that's going on a lot of places. Like next weekend, I'm supposed to be in Atlanta at
Mm-hmm.
a club called the Punchline. The mayor of Atlanta said the city's closed. The governor of Georgia said, no, it's not. So they have no idea. I have no idea, and that's just the way it is, man. I mean, you guys, Canada's doing a lot better than the US. You actually have a leader. He reads and, all of that stuff. You guys are just spoiled with your intelligence.
Well, it's
Um,
it's such a different situation, and I mean, I think it's a blessing also that we have a much smaller population, which I think makes it easier to handle sort of a situation like this. But there's no easy angle of it. I don't think. Like even speaking to a city councilor from my city last week on the show, it's incredibly difficult. So in LA, it's mandatory to wear masks for now. Is that correct to go outside or?
Yeah, you wear masks. The mask thing throughout the United States, it's ridiculous because what's happened is it's become a political issue, not a health issue.
From sort of an outside lens, because it's sort of odd, because obviously in Canada we have our own news network, CBC, CTV for news, but most people are plugged into that CNN and that Fox. So a lot of the political stuff sort of happens here and bubbles up here, even though we're not involved. So it's a strange thing, and I would say the majority of people here probably are not wearing masks. So it's weird times. It's one of those things that's unprecedented, and I guess we're just trying to make sense of it. But before we talk about some more current stuff, I'd like to go back with you a little bit because I think your past is super interesting as well as what you do now. So correct me if I'm wrong. You were an airplane mechanic before you started doing comedy?
Yeah, that was my first career. I was a
Wow.
mechanic for 10 years and then I became an instructor. I started training new mechanics. That's where the comedy really came in. I was the funniest instructor the company had, and I liked making them laugh. And it was my first time getting in front of a group, like
Hmm.
public speaking. And for me, I know it's a fear for a lot of people. For me, it was the most natural thing in the world. I never had any fear or worry being in front of the group. So yeah, that led to doing stand up.
That's interesting because I was sort of going to ask if it had a hand in it. So you were an instructor. So how many years had you been doing it at that point? Like just your whole life? That's what you were working towards at that point?
Well, yeah, it's not necessarily what I was working toward. I'd been a mechanic for 10 years, and I worked on some interesting aircraft. I worked on the stealth fighter, the F-117, which was the first of the stealth aircraft. I did a lot of work on the McDonnell Douglas DC-10. That was like a big commercial plane in the 80s. I worked a lot on those. I worked on private jets for the super rich. So
Wow.
people who would buy like a 727 and convert it to their private plane. I worked on some of those. And yeah, then I ended up at this job training new people, basically the basics of sheet metal assembly, like the most basic entry level work, because that was the work they needed the most people, just, riveting the plane together.
Okay.
Um, and I had done, like I say, I had done it for 10 years. So I fell into this job and I loved it. The job was fun.
Well, that sounds super interesting, especially if you have a passion for it. I mean, is that like the pinnacle of it? Because I mean, when you're working on those aircrafts, that must be sort of any aircraft mechanic's dream type of thing.
Well, I would say the pinnacle, I would say the best things I worked on was the stealth fighter, right?
Hmm.
Because that was when I was working on it, it was all top secret military technology. So
Mm,
just to give you an idea how it works, everything on your car came from aerospace, but a long time ago.
okay.
Technology starts with aerospace. So anti-lock brakes, airplanes had those probably since the 50s or
Yeah.
something like that. GPS comes from aircraft
Mm,
and so many other technologies. That's where it starts. And so when you're working on a top secret airplane, like the technology we were working on in the 80s, people weren't aware existed until the 90s, So that
right.
was fun. That was I'll tell you the bad side of it.
Hmm.
It's all top secret. So you go into this plant, they lock the gate behind you. You work in a giant hangar with all the windows blacked out, right? You can't leave. I mean, you could go outside, but you can't leave all day. Well,
Hmm.
my car got stolen while I was working,
Really?
and
From the grounds?
the plant security said, "Oh yeah, that happens every day because they know you guys can't come out for 8 hours." So the car thieves were like, "Oh, it's time to go shopping," and they would come. And it was what bothered me was how comfortable security was with that idea. They were like, "Yeah, they steal them every day. Happens all the time."
Yeah, they're like,
I was
"What do you
like, "Oh
expect? You're
well,
gonna leave it here.
yeah,
Your
I'm
fault."
glad you're okay with it."
Oh my God, that's insane. So you obviously there must have been like a pretty strict confidentiality agreement for that.
Well, they do. I mean, it's full on, government background check,
Mm,
secret security clearance, the whole thing. Yeah, you go through all of that.
man, that's next level stuff and probably something a lot of people might not have realized. So what made you get out of that? Was it your love for comedy or just did it just
No,
happen?
you know what it was? It was the business was changing, and I really had like it was a good job, but I didn't have a passion for airplanes.
Hmm.
And I had done all these different jobs, different parts of the airplane, I traveled around doing what we call recovery and modification. So when you hear about a plane like goes off the runway, right?
Hmm.
I was one of the people in the crew that they would send to fix it. When a
Oh, wow.
plane goes in airports are quite often right by the water.
Hmm.
So a lot of times a plane, for whatever reason, can't stop. It goes into the water. We in Puerto Rico, they literally pulled it like the nose of the plane was in the water. They pulled it out and we had to rebuild the entire bottom of the airplane. So having done some really cool stuff like that, the idea of going to the plant every day for the rest of my life, like, no, I wasn't going to do it. And then from the first time I did comedy, I'm talking, well, no, the second night. First time I did comedy, I did an open mic and I froze up after the second joke. It was not
Really?
good.
Where was this?
In Encino, in San Fernando Valley in LA. But the second time, which I took this comedy writing class, right? In the graduation, we had, I don't know, 150 people, whatever, in the audience, and I killed. And I was hooked. I was absolutely, like, there was no question in my mind that I was going to do stand-up after that one time. So aerospace went right off the table, and it was all just, I'm pursuing comedy.
How old were you at this point?
I was 30, man. I started late.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, a lot of people consider that starting late, but I mean, there's been a lot of, I mean, look at how it ended up. I mean, there's been tons of success stories of people starting that age.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm glad I found it, even if it was late, but versus not at all. So no, it was a good run. And, and Canada is a big part of my story, because I did New Faces and Just for Laughs in 97. I'd been doing comedy for 4 years. And that's when I truly feel like I became a pro comic. I got a development deal, so I had money. I quit my day job, and, I've been touring Canada ever since. Like, I've been part of Just for Laughs for 20 years now, and I love it. I love working Canada. So yeah, Canada's part of my career.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I mean, I've seen tons of your sets at Just for Laughs and such. So talk to me about that. Was that something that where you were coming from was always discussed? Like, you go to Montreal, this is the place to sort of launch yourself?
Something, I was fortunate in my naivete when I went to Montreal.
Okay.
Because it was a big deal. We knew, and back then New Faces was even a bigger deal, because this is before the internet. So no one knew who the New Faces were. Like, now everyone knows, it's no secret, blah, blah, blah. They put us in a separate hotel. They brought us in 2 days before the show. They put us in a separate hotel from all the other comics and everybody else. And they really tried to hide who the New Faces were until the showcase. So the good thing about that was, when you did your showcase, all the industry people came. All of the network people, the studios, the agencies, they're all there, right?
Because they built up that curiosity.
Yeah. And they had it in this theater, in this showroom, where the audience was downstairs and the industry are all hanging out upstairs on the balcony. So I didn't know enough to be afraid.
Right. You didn't know this at all.
I didn't know. I knew it, but I didn't know enough to be afraid. To me, it was just, I'm doing a set. You know what I mean? So, so I do this joke. I said, I don't like hockey. Right now, you do that joke in Canada. Obviously, the crowd. That's exactly what happened. They start booing. Right.
Really?
So the boo. Right. So I'm like, shut up. I don't like hockey, because the only thing black is the puck. And every time I look, they're hitting it with a stick. I said, now golf, on the other hand, right? So that was the joke.
Right. Oh, okay,
My manager came after the set. We do like 7 minutes, whatever. He literally came running down the stairs, and he grabs me, and he's like, "You are about to make a ton of fucking money." And he said, the keyword is ton of fucking. And he said, Hope your podcast isn't rated G. You'll have to edit that, but that's exactly what he said.
No, we're live. We're good. And
he said, when you told the audience at New Faces in Montreal to shut up, every industry person looked downstairs and said, "Who is that?" So if I had known I wasn't supposed to, maybe I wouldn't have done it.
It might have been a subconscious thing.
Yeah, to me, it was just, you're doing a set, and then we do 2 sets. So the next set, I did a different set, right? And they were like, "Oh my God, you did a different set." But to me, I'm like, it's 7 minutes. Like, that's only 14 minutes.
Yeah, you
I got more than that,
Yeah.
So being that naive helped me, because I wasn't afraid. And I wanted a deal. When I went up there, I knew about, back then you used to get development deals, and they would basically sign you to a studio or a network for a year and give you a big fat check and say, "We don't want you working for anyone else. You work for us, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah.
And it was great, because it was an amount of money. Like I say, you give up the day job, you could, it was a nice amount of money. So I wanted that, but I didn't know for sure if I'd get it. The other thing that happened was the acceptance from the other comics, right? From the pro comics,
Right.
because you go to New Faces, you're basically somewhere between an open micer and you've done a little bit, but you're certainly not a
You're
name, right?
getting
And
there.
this is back then. It's different now, but back then. So when I come off stage and guys like Dom Herrera and Chris Titus and Earthquake, and these guys are now, they're talking to me like I'm one of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so
Right.
so now, yeah, I'm a comic now. I'm one of the boys. I'm in the fraternity. That was a big deal. So yeah, I remember that. I remember that well. Everyone remembers me as from doing Last Comic Standing. And
Mhm.
Last Comic Standing was fantastic, and it put me on TV, and it helped a lot. But I always consider New Faces where I got discovered.
And that totally makes sense because again, it was on a ground level. You were in the room with all of these people. I feel like it's different when you earn that respect right there in person. So you'd been doing stand up for how long again at that point? About a year?
At that point, no. At that point, I'd been doing it for about 4 years.
Okay, so you were pretty experienced and well experienced at that point. So did things start to happen quick for you after that? Was your
Oh
manager
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
That was when I first got my late night TV stuff. I did Keenan Ivory Wayans show. I did Conan O'Brien's show. Um, you start getting. I signed with William Morris. I signed with the big agency and
Yeah.
started doing that stuff. So yeah, so that started a lot of doors, opened a lot of doors, I should say. And I also, it got me into Vegas, right? I did my first Vegas gig after that. Just a lot of things you get recognized for after doing something like that.
Most definitely. So, what would you say is for a comic? Like, what is that opportunity now? Would it still be that showcase? Would it be a show like Last Comic Standing?
There's so many ways now that comics quote make it. I mean, you look at Sarah Cooper right now, right? Like doing these Trump um, lip sync videos.
Mm-hmm.
She's hot as hell. So it's like when they ask her what made you a star, she'd be like the pandemic.
Right.
you
Pretty
know.
much. People had that
Um,
time.
so nowadays, social media obviously is a big thing that didn't exist back then. You still get some people who will do a show like America's Got Talent, like my friend Jackie Fabulous did America's Got Talent a couple of years ago, and it just opened a ton of doors. She left LA. She was in LA grinding, trying to make it. She did well on America's Got Talent and moved to New York because right now stand-up is New York is the place. And it's been fantastic for her career. And, so there's a lot of ways to make it. There isn't one anymore because there are so
Yeah.
many media outlets and people find you and so on.
That's a good point. It's not going to be one show or one television appearance. It's going to be probably a combination of those things. How long would you say, because you said New York City is the top city for stand up. How long has that been the case? Is that a new thing?
In my opinion and in my experience, the early 2000s, I think what made New York hot was, for one thing, the big name comics were in New York and they stayed in New York, right? Back in the
Yeah.
in the 80s and 90s, the big names moved to LA to get TV shows, right?
Hmm.
Seinfeld, Brett Butler, Roseanne, Tim Allen, the Wayans, all of that. They came to LA, right? LA was the place. In the early 2000s, they started staying in New York. You had guys like Chris Rock, Louis C.K. at that time. I don't know if we can mention him anymore. I don't even
At the time.
but, Louis C.K., Amy Schumer, and all of these other comics, they stayed in New York. And Comedy Central drew a ton of its talent from New York. You had Jon Stewart, obviously. So New York had the clubs. New York had more clubs than LA. LA basically has 3 clubs. We have the Improv, the Laugh Factory, and the Comedy Store. New York has 8 or 9 clubs, and that was before Brooklyn started, blowing up. Now I don't even know how many clubs are in Brooklyn, but New York
Really?
had more of a love of stand-up. LA was more acting, so
Right. More
comics were just
commercial.
staying in New York, and so yeah, I'd say in the early 2000s is when the switch. Now I grew up in New York, and but I developed my whole career in LA, so I
Mm.
never had any desire to move to New York.
And then you ended up staying in LA.
Yeah, I had already lived in LA. I came to LA in the aerospace biz, so I never had any desire to go back to New York. Even a couple of years ago, the Daily Show people, Trevor Noah, he really liked me, and they talked to me about working for the show, and I was like, Trevor, man, I love you, but I can't move to New York on a starting writer salary. Like, if I was
Yeah.
your age, then I could do
That would be the
it.
dream of a
but
lifetime, the job
but
of a lifetime for me.
yeah, but at my age and with my lifestyle and career, like I say, I built a life in LA. I
Yeah.
can't go to New York and have 2 roommates in a 1-bedroom and be a struggling writer.
No, it wouldn't make any sense. I mean, it's just bad business all around, definitely. But
Yeah.
hey, still a really good opportunity. Shout out Trevor Noah as well.
Oh, Trevor's great, but a lot of people like I see you got Joey D's picture up
Mhm.
behind you, and I love Joey Diaz. I loved him for a long time. He's a good friend and everything else, but now that's making people stars. Joe Rogan's making people stars now. You
Definitely.
know, so when you talk about making it, if you have someone who's made it who helps you, that's a big thing. That's a big thing, and a lot of comics are doing that for younger comics, for newer comics.
It's true. Yeah, it does seem to be opening up, and there's a number of platforms. Like I feel like the podcast business in general is just growing. I mean, with Rogan's Spotify deal, I think it's opened up the floodgates for that. I wanted to talk about something that's another part of your interest, which is motorcycles. I did a bit of research into that. How many motorcycles do you own? Is it 4 now, or is it more?
Yeah, it's 4.5. I got one little
Four and a
bike I
half.
call my half bike.
What's
Um,
the little bike?
it's called the Honda Grom. It's a
Okay.
little 125cc run around, kind of a mini bike. I couldn't have a mini bike when I was a kid, so I bought one as an adult.
Just to have to make up for lost time.
Exactly.
That's perfect.
I've always loved motorcycles from when I was a kid. My first ride on the back of a motorcycle, I was like 7 or 8 years old. It felt like I was flying,
Hmm.
and I fell in love with it. And I tell everyone, it still feels that way today. I just love it. It's my escape. It's meditative. I've thought of some great jokes when I was on a bike.
Really?
Yeah, it somehow it clears my mind, and so and also I love things mechanical.
Yeah.
Like from when I was a kid, I was a guy who used to take stuff apart and put it together, and motorcycles have that. There's still a raw mechanical vibe to a bike versus a
Definitely.
car. Cars have become, I mean, motorcycle technology has gone up too, but cars are so high tech now. I say that nowadays when you open the hood of a car, it just is none of your business.
Yeah, seriously. If the hood's even in the front, it's
Yeah,
insane.
it's not like the old days when you would actually work on your car in the driveway. Those days are gone, which I'm okay with because the technology's made them super reliable and everything else. But
Sure.
there's still a element of a mechanical feel to a bike. So yeah, I love them. And then Jay Leno, who has become a friend, and that's crazy to me that I'm friends with Jay Leno, but I am.
Hey, it could be
Uh,
worse.
he always calls me. He has a show called Leno's Garage where he tests and plays with different cars and motorcycles and stuff. And he always calls me when he has a crazy bike to ride.
Oh,
He's like, "Hey, come
nice.
over, do this." So that's fun.
That's quite the compound over there. What's it, 2 aircraft hangars?
No, it's actually 4. It's 3 for display and storage, and then 1 is a shop where him and his crew work on and build stuff.
Wow.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. But I tell everyone it's what any gearhead would do if they had that kind of money.
Exactly, right? It doesn't matter
It's
what
his
you're into.
hobby, and he just happens to have a ton of money to enjoy his hobby. So good for him.
No, it makes perfect sense. Did you guys meet through the show, or did you meet like at a club or
Yeah.
something? Yeah.
Yeah, we met through the show, and then but we've run into each other at car and motorcycle events. Yeah.
Nice. Because he's really out there, Leno. I mean, I feel like he's always making appearances in places.
He's a very ordinary guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's the most ordinary superstar you're ever going to meet. Like, he'll be, like there's a place called the Rock Store. It's up in the Malibu Canyons. It's just like a diner slash bar where motorcycle people hang out on the weekends, and they've been hanging out up the Rock Store for 50 years. Any given time he might be up there just hanging out,
That's
talking
awesome.
bikes, riding, or one of his crazy cars. And people always say they bump into him on the street. He'll take a minute and talk to anybody, and he'll talk to you about anything except show business. If you start
Right.
asking him like, hey, what's Angelina Jolie really like? Then he's like, nah, I don't want to talk about that. But if you want to talk to him about a 68 Mustang, he'll talk to you about that all day.
Yeah, then we're talking. No, that makes sense. I like having interactions like that too. In 2010, you actually got in a motorcycle accident on a racetrack. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was, this is where Wikipedia is very funny. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who writes the shit on Wikipedia, and you can't control it. So me and some friends, well, it's a common thing. It's called track days, right? People do it on motorcycles and cars. You go to the track, you pay whatever it costs, and you get to ride on the track. You get to practice. And basically it's like you get to ride fast with no cops, and you practice and you get better.
Okay.
So, but accidents do happen,
Mm-hmm.
So I had a crash on a track. I broke my wrist. Somebody wrote it on Wikipedia like I was some kind of hot ass Ducati racer. And I was like, man, this is fantastic. I'm not gonna change this. It's not true. I know motorcycle racers. Motorcycle racers are half my size. They're like jockeys, because like in anything racing, you want the rider or driver to be as light as possible. You don't want some giant heavy person weighing the bike down, So that's always been very funny to me, because it always comes up and people ask about it, and it's like, nah, not near as talented as you might think, but I'll take that.
Well, that's so funny because it was on these, I try to dig deeper, but obviously the stuff from Wikipedia will make its way to other sites. But it was written, it says that you were high-sided on your Ducati while racing, and the crash shattered your scaphoid and required
Yeah, it
surgery
did.
to
The
fix
scaphoid
the
is the
scaphoid.
scaphoid's a little bone in the wrist,
Yes.
and it did shatter. And
Okay.
that's actually a rather common injury for bicycles, motorcycles, whatever. I got to know the doctor who did my surgery. We've since become friends. And what happened, it's a little bone in the corner of your wrist. Well, when you're falling, your instinct is put your hands out, right?
Yeah.
That's just instinctively what happens. And that bone often gets hit and breaks. And it's hard to heal because where it's located, it gets very little blood flow and stuff. So he said, yeah, usually we'll try to pin it. And if we can't pin it, we just remove it, So
Okay.
you
So you did
lose
get a bone
about,
graft.
no, he just removed the shattered pieces. He tried to pin it once, it didn't work. So he removed the shattered pieces. I think you lose maybe 10-20% of your wrist motion. So it's not like it's crippling or anything. It's just, it's a good war story. I get to share the story with guys who are professional motorcycle racers. It's like, I even had one, this guy was a world champion, and he came up to me to ask about it because he had done it. And he's like, how long does that take to heal? And I was like, well, for me, it took months, but you're a, world-class athlete with the greatest treatment in the world. You should be all right in 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, professional coming for advice is always maybe a weird situation. Well, that's interesting that they sort of inflated it. I guess they were trying to get some more sensationalism on there. Has there been other things that you've read online that you're like, I never did that, or that never happened?
Oh, the funniest one is, and this is some clickbait site, someone sent it to me. So I'm single, I've never been married, no kids, right? So it said, Alonzo Bodden, single, married, gay, straight. Like it had all these question marks,
Options.
right?
Oh, question marks. Okay.
And then the whole article was like, well, he could be single, but we haven't verified it. He might be engaged, but we haven't talked to anybody. He could be gay, but he hasn't said so or come out, and we don't know of it. And it was like the whole article was just bullshit, But it was funny because I'm like, somebody took their time to write this, It's
That's
like
true.
if you've ever seen that clickbait of how much money someone's worth. Like
yes.
So-and-so is worth.
Celebrity net worths.
Man, I wish I had the money they think I do.
Seriously. That's what I hear from every person who I've seen listed on that. They say,
I don't know anyone who's worth as much. I don't know what they do. I don't know if they take, the only thing I can think is they somehow look at every penny you've ever earned and figure you've never spent a dime.
Yes.
So, that's the only way I could come close to the amount of money that they list on that. I wish they would tell my bank that, because my credit rating would go through the roof. They'd be like, wow, he's worth that much?
Honestly. No, I first learned it with Howard Stern is when I learned it was complete bullshit, because he was cut $500 million for a serious deal for the entire operation for a certain period of time. And then they list his net worth as $500 million. So it's like, okay, if every penny of that went to Howard's bank account, but that's just unfeasible. So
right,
things are crap. Right. Unbelievable. Well, before we wrap up, I just had one question I wanted to know, just about comedy, because you're such a unique comedian, and I don't look at you and say, like, you're just so true to yourself. So who has influenced you, if anyone, throughout stand-up? Like, who's your favorite comedian?
Well, Dave, Chappelle is without a doubt at the top of the art. Mm-hmm. What he does, I mean, I've always loved him, but now, like after that 846, what he did there, to me, made him I love social commentary. That's a comic I've developed. And I love talking about current events, society, people, etc. And he nails it so well. He so gets it. Like I've always looked at Carlin as the best in that. And Carlin was a big influence on me. But yeah, what Dave is doing is just mind blowing. Like as a comic, watching the art, you're just like, man, this guy he'll say whatever he wants, and he's right. That's the other part of it. But there's a lot of comics I learned from. Like I said, Carlin was an influence. George Wallace, I learned a lot. Still learn watching George Wallace. Tommy Davidson, I opened for Tommy for a year early in my career. Nice. Learned all kind of stuff watching him. He was coming off Living Color, so he was, really high up in his career. And so there's been just a lot of people. Dom Herrera is one that was one of my mentors. And, now, Lewis Black. Another one who I learned a lot. And the thing about a guy like Lou, like I can't watch Lou too much because I'll start doing Lou.
Oh, he's one of those? Yeah.
Yeah. So there are certain people that I don't watch too much of other comics because I don't want to pick up what they're doing. Yeah. I don't want to tag their topics. You know what I mean? So when people ask me, what do I talk about? I talk about what makes me laugh. That's my favorite. That's my favorite thing to talk about. But there's been a lot of influences, man. There's a lot of great comics, and some of them nobody knows. People don't know. So I've named some of the big names, and I've been lucky enough to meet all of those people, and to have worked with all of them at various times. So I'm lucky in that respect.
What was your interaction like with Chappelle?
I met Dave. And he's another guy who's just very ordinary, very cool. If you met Dave and you didn't know anything about who he was or anything, and people said, oh yeah, that's probably the biggest comic in the country, one of the biggest in the world. He's worth blah, blah, blah. You'd be like, nah, him?
Yeah.
Nah, man, that guy just like smoke weed. He's just funny.
He's just a cool guy.
He's very cool. So I met Dave early in my career. I was at this theater. I was in a class, and he was there to record a show, and we kind of met because he was there during the day doing his rehearsals or whatever. And I knew who he was, and we've always stayed in touch since then. Like not like friends, like we calling each other every week. No, but whenever we see each other, we talk, we laugh. We've done some shows, and I do a show called Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, which is a news comedy radio show on NPR, on public radio here.
Mm-hmm.
And he listens to it all the time. So that surprised me. But he was like, man, I love you on Wait, Wait. And it was like, damn, that's cool as hell, So,
seriously, that's awesome.
And then the people from Wait, Wait were like, can you get him on the show? I was like, relax.
Yeah, but, I'm not going to do that, by the way. Don't about any of this.
Yeah, no, it's all good. But so I met him, and he's really cool like that, The only big name comic, like superstar comic, that I've never met is Seinfeld.
Okay,
never
really?
Met Seinfeld.
He doesn't really hit. I would assume he hits no clubs, probably.
Yeah, he does in New York. He does the Cellar, and he'll go drop in and work out stuff. But I haven't crossed paths with him. And he used to drop in at the Improv in LA once in a while. But when they come like that, the thing about it, when they become a star like that, they're sort of guarded. Like I met Chris Rock, I'm friends with Tony. I'm friends with his brother,
mm-hmm.
and I met Chris, and Chris was very cool, but I could tell he was a little bit guarded in the sense that people are asking him for shit all the time.
For sure.
Hey, Chris, can I open for you? Hey, Chris, can you? And I'm like, I almost wanted to say to him, like, hey man, I'm not asking for anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like just don't worry.
Nothing's coming at the end, like no offer or surprise thing.
Yeah, but I understand that. So, like a friend of mine, a guy named Mario Joyner, who in his own right is a great comic, and he's friends with Seinfeld. He's known Jerry a long time. He opens for Jerry sometimes. And he said, Jerry's kind of like, he's friends with people he's known a long time, but he's cautious about new people because you don't know if they have a motive. You don't know if they have a motive beyond, the show that night or just saying what's up, So, and I get that. I could understand that. So,
well, you must get a lot of that too, being where you're at in LA. I mean, people must come to you for stage time type. I mean, I can only imagine you probably get
I get people. I love when I meet a new comic and I can help them. I become one of the old pros in that sense. I talk to, comics ask me for advice and shit like that. It started years ago and I was like, oh shit, I know something. Yeah, I'll tell you, and I share anything I know. And I'll get people gigs opening when I can. But it's, again, perception is funny. I have people sending me scripts wanting to get a movie made. It's like, have you seen me starring in any movies? Like maybe if I could just, get movies greenlit, maybe I'd do one for myself before I got to yours.
But they think sending it to you is the equivalent of sending it to Lionsgate.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's
it's
the thing,
perception.
Like perception. Yeah.
And TV is a big perception. When someone sees you on TV, they think you've made it and you're rich, you're done. And for some people that is true, not for me. But I love TV. I love when I get on TV. But to me, it's just, I got a good job that day. That's the way I look at it.
And that's the way I look at it too, like moving into this business, like, I mean, again, like it would be a dream for me to be in the position you're in just because, I'm out here working that 9 to 5 type of thing, but it's moving into it. It's always good to appreciate what you have.
Well, the thing is you keep grinding. That's all it is. You keep grinding. Everyone's grinding, you just, you do it on different levels, you do. And there are some people like now, right? So we're in the pandemic. There's no live work, this or that. And I tell people, like, I'm lucky enough that I have enough money to not work now. I don't have enough money to never work again.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are in that spot.
Some people have enough money to never work again, and they still work because we love what we do, right? I mean, you look at Joe Rogan and another guy who I've known for a long time, and Joe's always been real cool with me. I was joking with him. Joe got NBA money now.
Yeah, seriously, man.
You got, I said, Joe, I think your kids will be able to go to college. I think you got that now.
We're getting there,
and we laugh about it. But it's not like he got this big fat check and said, all right, I'm done. I quit. I think anything creative, you do it because you love doing it. If you really that you love doing it, and that's why you do it. And if you get the money and the success, and we all get it at different levels, if you're making a living doing what you love, you're doing great.
Yeah.
And that sounds easier to say once you've made it over that line, but it really is true. And the money, I always say, man, we're in a lottery business. You're working, you get one break, next thing you're a millionaire, or maybe you don't get that break and you just keep grinding all your life, but you love it because you're doing what you love. I don't know. So in your position, man, obviously, no doubt you would love to have a Rogan or an Adam Carolla or Two Dope Queens kind of podcast, but from what you're telling me, you're talking to great people, you're doing interviews, you're doing the work, you do homework. There's nothing worse than an interview with someone who doesn't know who you are.
Seriously, man. And that's, why would you even want to do that? I mean, I would never want to even host that.
Yeah. So, good luck and break legs and keep doing what you're doing. Keep asking interesting questions. And,
Thank you.
we're all grinding in different ways, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I hopefully I'll be able to get out to LA and say what's up at some point when this pandemic is over. I was planning on going out there this summer, but obviously makes no sense and not going to happen. But so what are you looking forward to? I know you have some dates that you're working on doing.
Stage, man. Stage. I so miss. I mean, I've got like this weekend, I'm doing a Zoom show and stuff like that. But there's still nothing like being on stage. I got to do 4th of July weekend. I got to do a 10-minute guest spot. And I tell people it was like being in the desert for 3 months and getting some water.
Water.
It was that actual live interaction with people from the stage. That's my favorite place. There are some people who love shooting a movie, acting. For me, live stand-up is the most creative thing in the world. So that's where I want to be.
I love that. Alonzo Bodden, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cassius. All the best, man.
And there you have it. My exclusive interview with Alonzo Bodden, actor and comedian. Make sure to go follow him on all of his platforms in the description below. Follow me on Twitter at Cassius Morris, Facebook.com/Cassius Show, and Twitter at Cassius Show as well. Subscribe to me on YouTube at YouTube.com/Cassius Morris, Instagram at Cassius Morris _, and all contact can be sent to CassiusBusiness@gmail.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, this is Cassius Morris saying, rock on.